So this is not a really popular parable. It's kind of a scary parable because you're talking about cutting down trees and giving up, right? But it's a very easy parable to understand. It seems like the translation of this is pretty straightforward. God is the owner of the vineyard. The fig tree is us, right? And Jesus is the gardener. And for 3 years, Jesus had done his ministry in the community, trying to help people to see the light. But the people are not listening. So the owner asks, why am I wasting these nutrients on these people who no longer listen? Why not give up and cut them down? And so Jesus, the gardener, intercedes on our behalf. Wait a minute, owner, let me help them. Let me stir up the soil a little bit. Let me add a little fertilizer. You know what fertilizer is, right? Let me add a little manure. This parable seems to be a warning, right? You have 1 year to shape up or God's gonna cut you down. And who are the fig trees? We are the fig trees. Now, this is what it seems to be saying, but I learned a little bit more about fig trees in Jesus's time and had a little experience at a parsonage with a fig tree in my backyard. Now, in Jesus's time and in the area, fig trees were very common. They grew in the wild because they were so easily grown, so easy to cultivate. They didn't really even need a gardener. Fig trees were a welcome sight if people were traveling on a dusty dirt road for hours and hours and days at a time. If they saw a fig tree, they would get excited. They would be happy because figs were sweet. And figs could be dried. And figs could even be used as ointment for medicine. Fig trees also had very large leaves. And so if you were hot, you could go under the fig tree and rest in its shade. Fig trees were also very, very fruitful and sometimes would produce more than once a year fruit for people to eat. The fruit is actually so plentiful on a fig tree that even on the same branch, there would be more than one fig. Sometimes even when the newest branches sprout, they immediately have figs on them. See, fig trees were common and popular. They became a symbol of peace and prosperity. That's why people wanted to grow fig trees and were comforted by the sight of one. And we are fig trees, the most useful, fruitful, and popular trees on earth. Now, more than that, fig trees are resilient. I don't know how it is here in Hawaii, but when I was in California, I lived in a parsonage that had a fig tree in the backyard. And the volunteer church gardener told me that he had found a fig tree under a metal shed, bent over. And when he found it, he dug it up and he stuck it in the parsonage yard, and it blossomed. He told me that if you wanted a new fig tree, all you have to do is just cut off a branch and put it in the ground, and it would grow. And let me tell you, I do not have a green thumb, so fig trees were very easy to care for. You know, some people might dig around it, air it out a little bit, or put a little manure on it, easy. But there's not much you can do to kill a fig tree in the atmosphere and the climate of Jesus's area and in California too. I know you can't kill a fig tree because I often forgot it was there. And we did not have automatic sprinklers. And even when you ignore the fig tree, it bears fruit. Not a little fruit, but a lot of fruit with big leaves and new branches. And we are fig trees. We are born to bear fruit, not just a little bit of fruit, a lot of fruit. Fruit that is useful in so many ways. We are loved because when life gets hard and hectic and hot, we can provide cool shade for one another. We are resilient because no matter how hard life gets, even with a metal shed stuck on our back, we can bounce back. You can cut us up and stick us in the ground and we will root. We will thrive. We are fig trees. Say it with me now, ready? We are fig trees. You never know what's gonna happen in church, right? We are fig trees. So why in this parable, why is it that this fig tree in the garden being well taken care of doesn't bear fruit? Well, Jesus the gardener is very clear. It just needs a little more tender care. Some more water, some more nutrients, some more gardening. The fig tree needs the gardener. Right now it is dormant, saving itself until the right time and care is given. And the gardener knows a year is all that is needed. Instead of this being a parable of doom and gloom, this is a parable of hope. A year is all it will take. The fruit will come. Love and tenderness and breath. With a little bit of all those things, we too will blossom. We too will be all that God created us to be. We are fig trees. Say it again. We are fig trees. Now, I want to share a story of someone who had been knee-deep in life's fertilizer. I don't know if some of you may have known Utu Loalangi from First United Methodist Church. He grew up in Tonga, and his parents were very, very dedicated to Christ. He remembers hearing about the words of Christ's love and sacrifice. He remembers giving his life to Jesus. He attended the best Sunday school in town. He also lived across the street from the Mormon church, and he remembers helping his Mormon friends with their conversion goals by being baptized. So every week he would go back and be baptized so that someone could say, hey, they saved a soul. The blessings of God were abundant in this young life. He had been well cared for. But unfortunately, by the time he was 19 years old, he was deep into a life of crime and drugs. First, he lived in San Francisco, where he developed a drug network there. And then he moved to Hawaii to become a leader among drug dealers. He was a big-time dealer, the kind you usually only hear about in movies or TV shows. And if you were to get drugs in Honolulu, most likely between the years of 1989 and 1992, if you were to be getting drugs in Honolulu, it was most likely coming from this young man. If anyone was looking for healthy fruit on this fig tree, it was clearly lacking. Now, Utu had been in and out of jail for little things like possession. One time he got arrested for driving the wrong way on Kalakaua Avenue on a dare. But he basically was able to stay out of trouble. But then in 1992, after a 9-month sting operation, He was arrested for intent to sell drugs in the first degree and possession of an illegal substance in the first degree, and both of them carried 20-year terms. On top of that, he had broken his probation from when he was doing that driving stunt on Kalakaua. And so there was an additional 5 years tacked on to those 4. That's 45 years in jail. And he was not even 25 years old. His wife, Samyana, was ready to leave him with his 2 young sons. His lawyer told him, look, they really have all the evidence they need to put you away for life. And so he sat in Old Triple C and knew that there was no hope, no way out. But then Utu remembered the words of his parents. He remembered what they had taught him in Sunday school. He remembered that someone had told him there's something bigger out there. And so with nothing left to lose, he fell to his knees in his jail cell and asked Jesus into his heart. More specifically, he told me, he said, whatever is out there, if you're for real, I need help. And that's when the miracles started to take place. His friends, well, his drug dealing friends, got in touch with a new bail bonds business in town that was looking for clients. So I'm not kidding, this is a real story, this is not a TV movie. So Utu was let out of jail on a $100,000 bail bond by none other than Dwayne the Dog Chapman. Do you remember him? He had that television show called Dog the Bounty Hunter. So he got out of jail. And then the next thing he had to do was figure out what to do with the big boss. He had to have a meeting with the big boss. And he had to determine if he was going to stick to what he had decided when he was kneeling in his jail cell. Now remember, he had a life. He had money, he had friends, he had protection, he had a lawyer, he had a chance because of all these drug connections. And he said, you know, when he walked into the big boss's office, he knew this is not the kind of work that you just walk away from. But he had made peace with God, peace with his family, and peace with himself. And he knew that this was not the life for him. And so he sat down in front of the big boss and said, I don't want to do this anymore. He expected this to be the end, to never leave that office alive. But the big boss just walked out of the room and never returned. Utu could have easily kept to a life of crime. That life was protecting him and providing him with resources and friends. But he was beginning to believe that he had more to offer than just manure. So he started coming to church, he started studying the Bible, he started praying, he started serving other people. He got involved in the community by serving those who were homeless, first with blankets, just giving out blankets to strangers who were cold on the street. And then he started passing out food. And then he started going to parks on a regular basis to provide food. This is way before anyone else was doing that. Utu started bringing homelessness to the forefront and even walked around the island in an effort to bring attention to the needs of those who were homeless. He actually became one of the leading experts in homelessness in Honolulu. And at the request of the governor, he and his wife ran the newest and largest shelter based on a brand new model that he had designed. In fact, Utu and Samyana started programs so many years ago that are continuing to this day to get people off the streets, on the job, and into housing long after Utu and Samyana moved away from Hawaii. That's a lot of fruit from that fruit tree. Do you want to hear the ending of this movie story? 2 years after his arrest, it was time for the trial. Now, this was an open and shut case, right? Like his lawyer had said, they had everything on Utu. Talk about a metal shed on his back, right? He was severely bent over. In fact, they were offering him deals like, tell us everything about your boss and we'll knock it down to 17 years instead of 45. The first week of the trial went on. The next week on Monday, his lawyer said, you need to say goodbye to your family and friends because when this trial is over, you'll be going away for a long time. And then on the following day, Tuesday, the DEA agent got up to testify about the car, the search, and the evidence. And suddenly, they realized that the police had broken the chain of custody of evidence. They could not confirm the security of the car from the time of the arrest to the time it was searched. The judge cleared the courtroom, and the judge whispered to the lawyers. And then Utu's lawyer escorted him out of the courtroom quickly and said, I don't know what just happened, but you have dodged a bullet. And all of a sudden, Utu was free. God had looked for fruit from Utu for so many years, but found nothing year after year. It would have been easy for God to give up on him and just abandon him. But after just a little prayer, a little tender care from the gardener, Utu bared not just a little bit of fruit, but a lot of fruit, and fruit that is still nurturing people today. You see, the moral of this parable is that God does not give up on us. We have within us the power to nourish, sustain, shelter, and heal a broken world because we are fig trees. Sometimes we are barren fig trees, living in a dormant state, waiting for the right amount of water and manure sometimes to save us. We can be peaceful and inspiring fig trees so that people are happy when they see us. We can share health and healing wherever we go with our great big branches and leaves to comfort those who are worn out in this life. And we can be like Utu, fruitful for fig trees, ready to share our natural abundance with others, nurturing fullness and well-being to all the earth. My friends, when we really look at this parable and the lived reality of Jesus' time and location and climate, this parable that used to represent doom and gloom becomes a parable of hope and promise. We are the promise because we are fig trees. Say it again. We are fig trees. Thanks be to God. We are fig trees. Amen.